Hey, what's up? This your boy Big Man. You already know what it is, man. So let's get right to it. Okay, so today we're going to continue talking about NBA Youngboy's trial, man. So we're at day 3 of trial, right? And it looks like things are coming to a close. Now, we're going to wrap up everything and talk about what's taken place in the case so far and how the jury has gone to deliberate about this situation, and they'll hopefully come out with a verdict soon, right? But before we talk about that, I'm going to recap some of the points that were made by the guy Lawyer for Workers on Instagram, who's been pointing out a lot of the finer details in the case. Now, it's been a lot of interesting things that have happened so far. You've had NBA Youngboy pose for pictures with fans. You've even had Floyd Mayweather Jr. show up to the trial in person in support of NBA Youngboy. But it looks like this thing is almost about over, and NBA Youngboy's fate is waving in the wind. You know what I'm saying? It's out there for the jury to decide, and we'll see how this thing goes. Now, before we get to the specifics and talk about all these details, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And man, let's get it. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about NBA Youngboy's case, and let's talk about the days prior, man. So on the very first day, you had Lawyer for Workers, Mohammed Gagnat. He went to the court in person to see the trial out, man, and he came back with this to say.
More from the Youngboy trial. In the opening conference, the prosecutors mentioned that, hey, we think the defense is going to try to bring up the fact that the FBI named their operation to arrest and apprehend NBA Youngboy Operation Never Free Again. And, you know, that's a play on the moniker Never Broke Again. The judge kind of stopped the government, and they're like, yo, I don't really understand what you're coming from with all this. This is all a sideshow. This is a simple possession case. This is about whether or not he possessed the gun. I'm going to deal with that, but I don't know where you're coming from. It really just shows you what's going on in this case. This is not a typical gun possession case, because this is NBA Youngboy and the government is treating it like World War VII. So it's a very interesting window into understanding the dynamics at play when you're at the opening conference of a trial, you bring up a point to the judge, and the judge just kind of scratches his head and goes, what?
Now, according to what was reported, man, there was a lot of back and forth between the feds, you know, the prosecution in this case, and NBA Youngboy's team, you know what I mean? But the biggest thing that came out of the first day was that, you know, the judge decided that NBA Youngboy's lyrics would no longer be used in the trial. Like, there's no case for that. There was no need for that. He was just looking at this case as a simple gun possession charge. So that's the biggest takeaway point, that the lyrics were not going to be used in the case, and this was going to be looked at as a gun possession charge only. They didn't want to hear about Operation Never Free Again. They didn't want to hear about any of that. All they wanted to do was look at the facts of the case as far as a gun is concerned. Now, in day 2, things turned up a little bit.
Regardless of whether or not you're able to recover prints, regardless of whether or not there's multiple prints, this expert testified that I never tested the firearm that they are accusing the defendant of possessing. I never tested it for fingerprints. I'm pretty sure there are no other fingerprint experts that are going to testify. So it looks like the prosecutors are going to charge him with possession of a gun without ever testing the gun for prints. Youngboy update, we heard from the FBI's fingerprint expert who did testing on the evidence. It was kind of shocking. So the FBI, this expert did not actually test the firearm for prints. So they don't have any of Youngboy's prints on the firearm because they didn't test the firearm for prints. She did test the magazine and the cartridges, and she said that I wasn't able to recover any prints that were suitable for analysis, and that happens in cases. But, you know, regardless of whether or not you're able to recover prints, regardless of whether or not there's multiple prints, this expert testified that I never tested the firearm that they are accusing the defendant of possessing. I never tested it for fingerprints. I'm pretty sure there are no other fingerprint experts that are going to testify. So it looks like the prosecutors are going to charge him with possession of a gun without ever testing the gun for prints. Youngboy update, we heard from the FBI's fingerprint expert who did testing on the evidence.
Now, originally it was reported by, you know, this guy Lawyer for Workers from Instagram that, you know, the gun was not tested, but he backtracked on that and he made some statements on social media that said the gun was tested. And in this post right here, it said this. It said they did test the gun for DNA. 5 contributors found, 3 male and 2 female. Lab could not determine whether any of the 5 was #Youngboy. So basically, they put it out there that, you know, they DNA tested the guns, but they didn't find anything that could point out NBA Youngboy, that could say definitively that NBA Youngboy was the possessor of this gun, because they found 3 male and 2 female DNA on the weapon, you know what I mean? And I guess they didn't test it for fingerprints, and they didn't find his fingerprints on there either. Or that would have been, more of a clue that it was his weapon. So it really looks like it's up to the jury in this situation, right? And as we come into day 3, we find that to be more and more true, man. Okay, so let's talk about some of the finer details being reported going in today. Now, per a post from Rap House TV, NBA Youngboy's case basically had this update. It said, final witness, an ATF agent, said that the gun found in Youngboy's car resembled the one in the pic of Youngboy at Shine Jewelers. Now, Shine Jewelers was a jeweler who was also interviewed, or I should say, who was cross-examined or questioned in this case. You know what I mean? He was one of the witnesses in the case, and people thought it was weird they had a jeweler there, but I guess it was for that purpose, right? Now, the agent admitted there was no serial number, ballistic gun match on the gun. So basically, they didn't have a match from the pictures to say that that was the same gun from the pictures. And YB's team, his legal team, came back to basically say that, no, that's not a real gun in the picture. That's an airsoft gun. You know what I mean? It's not a real gun at all. So, that goes back to show that he didn't commit any crime. Now, this post ends by saying this. It says, they look nearly identical. They're talking about an ENNX 45 caliber that retails for $3,500, jurors heard, and the Tokyo Mari Airsoft FNNX 45 retails at $169. So they're talking about the fact that there's an exact replica that's an airsoft gun for paintball or whatnot, man, which is harmless, unless you're on the paintball, course or whatever. I can't say it's harmless, but that was the last thing that was said by the witnesses, or the last back and forth. And then you had the guy, lawyer for workers, who was leaving the court, and when things went to rest, he left this post right here.
Oh man, the prosecution just rested. The judge looked at the defense. Do you have any witnesses to present? The defense said, no, we rest. The case is now in the jury's hands. They have NBA Youngboy's fate in his hands. He's facing multiple years. I would say in probably 2 to 4 hours, you're probably going to get a verdict from this jury. Maybe it'll be tomorrow, maybe it'll be next week, but I'm saying 2 to 4 hours, verdict is coming.
Now, based on his expert opinion, we should be getting a verdict today. Like sometime today, 2 to 4 hours, he said at that time. So we'll see, and we'll be standing by. He said the verdict could also come out, later on, maybe like tomorrow or maybe even a week from now. But, it seems like they were pretty quick with the trial part of this. So we'll see how this thing's end up. You know what I mean? So with that, this has been your boy Big Man. Do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And make sure you hit that notification bell so that way you get a notification every time I drop this hot content. And we out of here. Peace.